Whatever happens, this corporation will live up to the guiding principles of its founder: courage, strength, conviction. We will meet each new challenge with the same aggressive attitude.
How can we help you, officer?
Dick Jones is wanted for murder.
This is absurd. That thing is a violent mechanical psychopath.
My program will not allow me to act against an officer of this company.
These are serious charges. What is your evidence?
I had to kill Bob Morton because he made a mistake. Now it's time to erase that mistake. I had to kill Bob Morton because he made a mistake. Now it's time to erase that mistake. I want a chopper, now! We will walk to the roof very calmly. I will board the chopper with my hostage. Anybody tries to stop me, the old geezer gets it. Dick, you're fired!
Thank you.
Boker Tov Talmidim. It's time once again for a soulful psalm. And this particular soulful psalm is going to be Psalm 82. Now, I started with a clip, the climax of a very fun sci-fi parody called RoboCop, made, I think, 1982. At the time, people were appalled at the cartoon violence in it. I think we've sort of moved on from that. But it was also sharp and witty, and I think goes pretty much to the point of our psalm, because it's about the quest for justice. Justice not only on the streets, but justice on high. And as we look at this psalm, I think you'll see the relevance of it in a kind of humorous way. So let's talk about Psalm 82. Psalm 82 is really interesting on a number of levels. It's interesting artistically because it's really one of the best preserved examples of poetry parallelism that is in the Psalms. Psalms often under the hands of scribes who had not yet decided that this was sacred scripture, just a nice poem, would often make modifications to improve it. And some of the original structures built into these poems gets lost with either subtractions or additions. There are modifications that go along, but this one's really, really well preserved. It also sort of points out the fact that our sacred scripture generally didn't start out as sacred scripture. It just started out as a nice piece of literature, and the ancients felt free to modify it. We know by comparison that a lot of Homer's work in both the Iliad and the Odyssey has been revised over the centuries and fiddled with. And the same thing happened in the Psalms and in other parts of the scripture. But this one really captures it. So I'm going to talk to you about three things. I'm going to talk to you about literary structure. I'm going to talk to you about the strange history that seems to lie behind it, and also what I think is the dominant theme. And so let's start. It's a short psalm, so I'm going to read the whole thing to you. It starts 82, a psalm of Asaph. We've talked about Asaph, and this is one of them. And it goes like this. You could translate this a number of different ways, but this is the JPS translation. God stands in the divine assembly. Among the divine beings, he pronounces judgment. Verse 2, how long will you judge perversely, showing favor to the wicked? Selah. Judge the wretched and the orphan. Vindicate the lowly and the poor. Rescue the wretched and the needy. Save them from the hand of the wicked. Literally, wonderful parallelisms. God stands in the divine assembly among the divine beings. How long will you judge perversely, showing favor? Each one of those is a parallelism. And then it goes on to a list of those people who in most societies don't get a fair shake. The orphan, the poor, the wretched, the needy. And then it goes on and says, save them from the wicked. And the wicked appears twice as a structure in the first half of this poem, and then in the second half again. So it says, showing favor to the wicked, save them from the hand of the wicked. So there's a nice rhythm to it. All right. What's the divine assembly? Who is God talking to? What's this all about? Well, okay. The standard Jewish interpretation of this is that God is speaking to human judges. This has been part and parcel of Jewish commentaries to this Torah portion, or this psalm, for centuries, millennia. Most famously, Rashi claims that when it says Adat El, which means assembly of the divine or assembly of God, that Elohim can mean God, but it also is a term for a human judge. He comes to this conclusion very cleverly by pointing back to the book of Exodus, where it says that God is going to make Moses an Elohim to Pharaoh, a God to Pharaoh. And the original rhetoric, I really think they mean to say, God is saying, I'm going to make him like, you're going to be a divine avenger over Pharaoh, right? So he thinks he knows what divinity is. He has no idea you're going to be that. But you can also read it as you're going to be Pharaoh's judge. And so Rashi uses that to explain what's going on here. But in fact, it's radically different, as you will see. When we start with the divine assembly and we talk about the divine beings, we're talking about gods. And in fact, this is known in scholarly circles as the quote unquote monotheistic psalm. So, in an archly mythological way, it tells a narrative, maybe historical, maybe ideological, about the overthrow of polytheism and its replacement by the God of Israel. And this is acted out. So it's like God shows up and reads the riot act to all the other gods and says, you're inadequate. You're not doing your job. You're not protecting the vulnerable. And I'm dethroning you. As the scene from RoboCop shows us, RoboCop walks into the board of directors on high. There they are on top of their skyscraper, and declares one of them is guilty of terrible crimes, and the CEO of the company, or the chairman of the board, or whoever he is, says, "You're fired," and that ends up with him being shot and plunging out of the tower to his death. Exactly what's being described here. It's just a divine mountaintop rather than a skyscraper. All right. So that's why I picked this particular scene from RoboCop. Um, it seems to be God is dismissing the other gods. And there's nothing subtle about it. It is a drama meant for the reader or the listener to imagine all the gods that they know about around them in other societies and other cultures, and maybe gods worshipped by other Israelites. And they're being told, no, these guys are worthless. They're not to be worshipped. They don't deserve it. God is firing them. It's a Donald Trump, you're fired moment, right? And clearly, this is meant to be very mythological. Is this meant to have been an actual event? I think it's more like high theater. But in any case, God pronounces against the other gods and finds them inadequate. All right. So, and by the way, the idea of the Adat Elohim or the Adat El, the assembly of the gods, it's just like Mount Olympus. In the Canaanite tradition, the gods live on a mountain called Zaphon. And so, this idea of the gods dwelling together in an elevated place is common currency in ancient thinking around the Eastern Mediterranean. So, the author is cleverly using uh, the kind of visual image that we have of Zeus, Apollo, and Hera, and all the other Greek gods sitting on top of Olympus, and he stages this scene using that kind of imagery. All right, so that's the historical context. We have no idea when this was written, but it's, I think, a populist work. It's meant to speak to the average person who envisions the gods in a fairly primitive way and making a point that the God of Israel is taking charge and kicking tuchus, as it were. All right. So then it shifts to the third person, which may be the author rather than God himself. So he's explaining what's going on. And it goes like this, starting in verse 5. They neither know nor understand. They go about in darkness. All the foundations of the earth totter. I had taken you for divine beings. In other words, the average person imagines that the gods are real. Sons of the Most High, all of you, but you shall die as men do and fall like any prince. You're fired. Out the window they go. Um, the idea is that we've deluded ourselves about what divinity is, and they are being dismissed, and they're going to die, whether that be fade from memory, no longer worshipped, become mortal, however you want to translate that. That is what that message is. You shall die as men do, fall like any prince. All right. So temporarily enthroned, they're now out. And then it concludes with a supplication to God. Arise, O God, judge the earth. All the nations are your possession. In other words, God, you are now in charge of everything. All right. So I'd say the key of the spirituality of this is the one that I emphasize many times, that the God of Israel, as imagined by our ancestors, fills many of the same functions as the mythological gods of different pantheons. So he provides fertility, just as there's a god of fertility. He provides rain and seasons, just as there are gods of lightning and thunder. God is the God of all the aspects of the universe. But the key, the basis, the foundation of God's legitimacy is that this God, the God of Israel, is a God of justice, that God is not satisfied as other gods are with merely being worshiped and served. What God is looking for is not sacrifices. It's just like Isaiah. I don't care about your sacrifices. Pour me a river of oil, slaughter me 1,000 sheep. It doesn't matter. What I want is I want you to love the good, hate the evil, and to make a just society. You honor me by doing that. And this flips back into the theme of judges. God is the judge on high, who sets a very high standard for what the world should look like. And then we, as partners, as judges below, have to make that a reality in our society also. So just as God throws out the worthless ones, we are supposed to throw out the worthless and corrupt people in human society and make sure that the widow, the orphan, the wretched, the poor, all of them enjoy a measure of justice, just as the rich and the fortunate and the lucky and the Jeff Bezos and all the other people, they get to benefit from our society, and the poor are entitled to that also. So the spiritual center of this is the idea that God is a God of justice. And like RoboCop, he's going to uh, show no deference if he's allowed to. And we too have to implement that. So all of that is, I think, built into this wonderful, compact psalm with this wild imagery of God throwing the gods off the mountain. So that's this particular psalm for this week. And I encourage you, go watch RoboCop, because it's really an extended meditation, violent, funny, but an extended meditation on how hard it is to achieve true justice in human society and in the world at large. And that's the preoccupation of this psalmist. So until next week, I look forward to bringing the next psalm to you. I hope you have a wonderful week, and do justly, love mercy, walk with your God.